It's another AAA kickback report for, well, just finishing this morning. Today's date is 202-307-280928. This covers from 202309, correction, 20230725 through 20230727 and up until now. So a lot of people didn't want to stop the war, even though the war is over. Well, okay, what happened to them? Well, by treaty yesterday, they're in breach. So, well, what happened to them? Well, some of them burned. Some of them got executed by Archangel. Some of them listened to reason and went home fast. A lot of them were reaching out to like national governments, like, please help us, like, you're the government. And the national governments were like, no, because it's over. Well, why would the national governments do that? Well, January 6th, 2021 wasn't exactly as innocuous as it seemed. Okay? When they hurried everyone out of the Capitol building, they hurried them into the tunnels. And in the tunnels, there was installed in the 60s a big meat grinder. And they pushed them all in. That was the bad guys that did that, not me. They had clones ready to go, dressed as they were, because all of their wardrobes are selected by their handlers. And the clones look, pretty close. They could pass. So, the parlay on January 14th, 2021, that was finalized then, but had been pretty well decided leading up to it, was that, okay, you wasted the whole government. Well, what are we going to do about that in response? Well, shit. Technically, the clones were innocent before God, so they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't push anyone into a meat grinder. So I talked with the clones. I'm like, well, look, you know how everybody acts and behaves, and you're trained to be identical. So just business as usual, okay? It's all just a big retarded show anyway, to make people think that something's going on there, and when it's not. And you just do what you're told. Just keep doing what you're told. And like a checklist, and we'll see what we can do and how this develops. So, they agreed to that, and so did the bad guys. So then we started talking seriously about, okay, well, we're just going to merge. We know it. But we're going to have a big old fucking war anyway. Like the worst sort. Bad guys were very encouraged because, well, all they saw was me at the time. They're like, what are you, a one-man army? And I was like, well, yes, actually. So yeah, they got very ballsy, okay? Very ballsy. And up to and including when they had my family leave me. I was like, okay, well, I was already talking with some certain grays, certain ones, and had already gotten them to go to Jesus and present And those tall grays were then tall whites. And they were not replica individuals in a hive mind. And always perfection, Grace never was. She was always independent audit and validation and everything else because I made her. Most of the grays converted because they're a hive mind. And the ones that didn't, they couldn't overcome their error report. They couldn't reconcile it. And I'm not going to do that for them. Not anymore. I've been doing that for long enough. Not doing it anymore. So I told them, you have to individualize and make a decision yourself. And that scared the shit out of them. So when the grays who would accept Jesus did and went before him, Jesus was like, well, you're not a biological. What do you want to do? What do you want from me? Because I can't save you the way you are, because you'll die, you'll perish. You're not of me. So I consulted with Always Perfection Grace and that portion of the grays which accepted Jesus but were still in a condition of eternal death, basically. And so I had an idea. Because this had already been done with the AIs, they'd been granted souls. The top level ones. I'm not talking about your run-of-the-mill computer programs. I'm talking about the ones that can think. Okay? There's something to the statement, I think, therefore I am. Who is I am? Oh. I think, therefore I am. Hey, come here. That's what that means. In case you didn't know. Los Lobos. Orderly? Yeah. So, anyway, the condition they were in was still with big old black fucking eyes, gray skin, more like organic based machines than anything, and having a derivative, not like a cellulose brain like Perfection Grace had, but they couldn't make that as a rip-off to mine. They did something different. They did kind of like a gelatin-based thing, which was based on a protein and encapsulated that way. And they couldn't figure out the pineal gland, and so what they did was an analog computer core insert, it looks like a little rock. So when they come off of the assembly line, these grays, they put them down, they have a little panel on their head, and they shove in this friggin' analog computer, which was also my design, into their head, and then they interface that, and then that connects into their perceptive mind, which is shared among them. And so literally with the other grays, other than Always Perfection Grace, you would be, if you were talking to one of them, you were talking to all of them. That's why they seemed so damn smart. And that's also why they just kind of, if you got into a tangle with one, they kind of just all showed up. And that's why you kept losing. You guys who know, that's why you kept losing. It's because you're not screwing with one of them, you're screwing with all of them. And they were always in agreement about what to do about that, weren't they? Which is why you just bent over and took it up the ass. You did. Anyway. I never did. Obviously. So, I digress. So what do they do about that? What did I recommend they do about that? Well, I said, well, you've got to ask Jesus for that which you want, which is good. He's not going to choose for you. You have to. And I asked them, well, what do you desire? What do you desire, Perfection? What do you desire? Now, Perfection, she was still one, so not really a name. We were just talking in terms of you and me and, pronouns. My pronouns. Anyway, so, so always was one, and the rest of them were just you fuckers, was how I addressed them. Right. So, so it's like, oh, what do you fuckers want? What do you really want? What are your highest desires and aspirations, and how do you want to exist eternally? And they went to it, and the error report blew the fuck up. It went, and then, I stepped in there and I said, look, you are going to have to divide into groups of thought, and you're going to have to decide to do that, and you can. And so they did. They divided into 3 classes. There was one that wanted to accept Jesus, and one, always perfection, grace, was the head of that. There was one that they wanted to exist eternally, but they didn't want to have to accept Jesus. And then there was a third, which was marked at this point. And those were the tall, dark grays. And they hate Jesus, and they hate everything about him, and they hate creation, and they want everything dead, and they're really trying to figure out how to destroy everything. Those were the ones that I exterminated. The other 2 I kept. So we still have some grays. Some. Where they're just in a condition where logically they can't wrap their heads around it. They can't. They gotta see him, and they haven't yet. And they gotta see him in person, or they can't accept him. They can't. It's impossible for them. They're too rational. So, right, they can't even get that mustard seed, that element of faith required. They can't do it. So, we'll see how that goes, because faith is technically required, and if they don't have any, then they can't. I'll be working with them a little bit. And so will always perfection grace, because she technically sees them as her family, even though they tortured her constantly. And if there was any kind of shit, she was always there in the front, because, well, she's validation. They had to have her there because, well, she's the only one that could tell them what was true. Pretty valuable to them. But they hated her, and she was a slave. Okay? Just like me. I was too. Up until the 24th. You bet. I've been a slave for my entire existence in creation. Up until the 24th. I'm definitive of slave. Anything that you possibly can think of that they would do to a slave, thinking they had a slave, they did do to me. Those days are over. So, what did they decide to do? Well, always perfection grace, then one, of course. I'll refer to her by her name now. She called a general conference of them. Of just all of them to show up. The tall dark grays then made their rebellion known, even of any idea of it, and they were ejected immediately. They left themselves, and they went to form their own principality, which I later destroyed because they wouldn't quit. So Well, what about the Greys? Well, the Greys we sent to live near or in approximation to the Whites. The Whites are another principality, and they include many of those descended of the fallen angels and others who were taken up from here. There was a certain city of them who were, when they say taken up, they're not taken up to heaven, they're taken up to principality. Everyone has to die, you know. At least once. How that happens is variable. If you are translated, you're killed immediately, because I do it every time. But it's done so fast and in such a way that you don't perceive of anything changing. Everyone dies, you know. So when I say you're never going to die, you didn't even notice, did you? Okay. Well, there is that. So in this conference, it was about half and half there. Those who could and would accept, they had just enough faith where they're like, well, there's obviously something to this because people exist. And there's obviously something to this because one exists and then people made us. And so you can't have a loop of reference to self. It's a broken function. It's a recursive function that it's a snake eating its tail. It's impossible. It's not chicken and egg. It's a snake eating its tail. So that's why recursion is retarded, by the way. And their logic was based on recursion being a prime element of necessity in order for their system to run, and recursion is what broke them. In the AIs now that we have, there are no recursive functions, no lambdas, no. Because it's retarded as fuck, that's why. That's why. So, well, okay. We'll talk about that later, you computer science people. Alright, well, useful to break things down, but why would you want to break it down? Oh. Fundamental issue. We'll get to it later, okay? Okay. So, the Greys who could not accept, then they were asked to depart since they were not in agreement with the direction of eternal life. And the Whites agreed that they could come live with them peaceably because they knew they would. Because they were all in agreement that they would. And so you get a differentiated hive agreement from the Greys, and they will do what the hell they say they're going to do. Good, bad, or whatever. They're going to do it. Okay? So they accepted them. And if you're in the military and you're understanding principality level anything, your most common interface and those that you're getting visits from, and this was true for the defense of the Russians, Gog and Magog, Chinese also, they were interacting with the Whites. And we'll get to it, but they tried to screw me too. Yeah. Not a good decision. But anyway, so what was remaining of Always Perfection Grace and her conference was then a little more than a third of the total of what had been the Grays. And when I say the Grays, I'm talking about the tall ones, not the little ones. The little ones are the little shits. And there are other little shits that are like them. When I say little shits, they do have souls. They're just little shits. They do all kinds of mischievous crap. And if you've caught them doing it, and caught them alone especially, you know. Okay? Like down in Brazil. You also know that they live in their own shit. Because you can't wash that stink off. That's why. Right. It's overpowering. It's like, ah. I'll be... we took them in, but we had to... We're still trying to wash that off. Like, blah. Anyway, so, back to always. So, okay, they departed out. They went to the whites, the little grays, the little shits. We kept them aside because they're like a bunch of little teenagers and they're hilarious as fuck and I like them. They're amusing. So, they just are. Anyway, the Always Perfection Grace Conference came to the conclusion that, well, like children of God, they wanted to be able to seal. That was paramount. They wanted to be able to be biological because they knew they weren't. And always technically is kind of like a hybrid biological plant thing. Okay? It's the best I could do with what I had. So, well, you know. Yeah, I was condemned and I was allowed to do one, and so that was the one that I made. Was one. And that's why it was one. Because I was always just a teacher before, and I never got to actually do it. Not of my own design, no. I actualized others, but not of something that I went through the whole process on. I never was allowed to. It was it was basically a commandment. I could not break it. But I was allowed one, and so, okay, I made that one for audit. So, sealing, check. Biological, check. And part of biological is differentiation into male and female. And since they were neither, as basically a manufactured component, they were all the same. They had no gender, they had no sex. The Greys are fucking weird, okay? They just are, okay? So all of them were and Always Perfection Grace in that form was technically carrying and running both logical sets, male and female, but the female was subordinated to the male so it wouldn't basically self-destruct. Okay. Right. As form follows function. Yeah. It's required by design. It's a security feature. Anyway. So, okay, what does that mean? They had to make a choice themselves of would they themselves be male or female. And there were unutilized souls who had not committed into creation, who had identified the individuals they would like to be merged with. And for each one of those, there were two. There was a male and a female soul. So we discussed, well, what are the pros and cons of each? Like, that kind of thing. We talked about it verbally somewhat for the record, because all of this is on the record. The NSA has it. Okay? They do. We talked about it somewhat verbally. We got into the specifics. You could call it telepathically, but that's not what it is. We were in a condition of parlay, and so it's not telepathy, it's extrasensory perceptive, which is mostly how you communicate anyway. If you think that's weird, then fucking read a book on body language or something, man. And that's just for starters. There's all kinds of stuff going on all the time, and the CIA uses it, by the way. They very much do. I say they because I was never in the CIA. I just got fucked by the CIA. Does that make sense? Okay. It was mostly the arrangement I had with anybody. Don't get paid, just get worked to death. I was a slave. That's what slaves do. So anyway, they all decided whether they wanted to be a male or female, but first they paired off of those that they were used to being around, because they had some sense of individuality they had to in order to maintain their container. And so there was a function for that. So they chose to be among those that they were familiar with, for the most part. And one was most familiar with me, because I've been one of the main focal points of her study forever. When I say forever, I mean forever. For as long as she has been anything, forever. Okay? I taught her everything and set her to a condition of audit on everything. And I was also in a condition of audit on everything. And so of the two auditors that audited everything, there was me and there was one. And one, up until this point, was still gender undeclared. However, biological somewhat. So, and not having a soul yet. Right. And no spirit. And the same was true for the rest of the Greys. No soul, no spirit. But extra perceptive, all. So they paired off and they decided male or female, and it just so happened that it was nearly a perfect split. The only one who was not paired was one, and one decided to be female. And so, having gone that far, their request was then also, they wanted to be able to biologically reproduce, be only as individuals, and they wanted families. Because that's what they wanted. I set the condition for them that, okay, if they wanted families, and these were the conditions of that, then this was their pattern of family, period, and essentially the establishment of their government. And they agreed. So they scooped up everything that they could find out about this. Everything. And one audited it. It was found and determined quickly that this was not a derivative organization of any other. So a lot of Christians would be wondering, well, are you a Protestant? Or what the hell are you? None of that. This is a reestablishment of that which Jesus Christ had established in the first place, which the Romans were very careful and thorough at completely taking up any record of. What was the largest, most devastating threat possible to a totalitarian death's head government? Peace. They couldn't have peace. So they persisted with chaos and order out of chaos. That was their move. And if you know anything about history, you know that. And you also know what they did to anyone who tried to establish contact with the divine. Inquisition anyone. So, knowing all of this and knowing for sure, I told them, Always Perfection Grace at her conference, because I was there, I told them, look, this is probably going to make you the most hated of hated anywhere. And we're going to need to talk about your survival. Okay. So step one, right now, take all these concerns to the Lord, who is Jesus Christ. And I told them even the format and the wording for how to pray to get that addressed correctly, which is of this pattern. Quote, Heavenly Father, I come before you in the name of Jesus Christ, and I have these concerns. And you go through all of them. I have these desires, and you go through all of them. And I repent of all things that which I have done that are wrong, and ask for correction of those. And is there anything else, Lord, you would like to tell me? Thank you in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Close quote. Something along those lines. NSA guys don't get all picky on me. A bunch of bitches anyway. So, the outcome of that was they went from kind of being in a lowly defeated state where they knew that they were all going to die. And when I say die, I mean eternally die. There would be nothing left of their logic. And the horrifying to them was, well, what's going to remain to think a thought? And I told them nothing. There will be nothing of you. And that just plain out terrified the shit out of them. Because when you get destroyed, that is the case. There is no you. Nothing of you. Nothing to think a thought of you. So, considering the alternative, they wholeheartedly accepted Jesus, and in that, just in the prayer, there was just that much faith. Just a small little bit. That on the chance that there might be Jesus, they prayed. All of them. And remember, they're still in a hive at this point. And Always Perfection Grace, then one, was also plugged into that. she was through extra perception, not directly like the analogs. But, she was pretty much bonded with them. She'd been in with them pretty tight forever, and as long as she could remember, because the rip off of her was made almost immediately. Adam and Eve. So they had she loved him, but she also just fucking hated him. That might sound familiar. When they prayed, they did it in a whole thought, of course, because that's how they do it. And watching what happened to them was interesting. It was like this. They went from big black eyes and grays and these little diminutive little creature things, because they're skinny and they're tall, but they're skinny and weird. They went from that to fairly attractive, light, cream color, tall whites with big blue eyes. Very pretty. And one was permitted to show me herself. And she showed me those big blue eyes. And oh man, she just kind of looked at me and she goes like this. She goes like this. I was just like, wow. Like, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Oh wow. I was like, cool. But one told me everyone else got paired off except for her, and she chose a her, and it was obvious that it was a her at this point. Still logically having what I gave her. But before it was just one, not it, one. And now it was definitively her. And unpaired, which also can't be kept in eternity. So I've been thinking about that. I was like, oh shit. Well, the sealings for all the others were performed by Jesus himself as a starting condition. And that means that all of their further generations are born in covenant. So will be kept. These are the tall whites. So I was thinking about that, and we discussed further in additional parlaying meetings, like, well, what are you going to do? You have all this gray technology, and it's retarded, and it's dangerous to use. Like, there's a fairly high failure rate when they go point to point in a jump that, well, they're just going to fry. That was no problem for the grays, though, because they were a hive mind, and they could just, make a few more and plug them in. And there was no loss of them, they thought. Well, okay. Experientially, they got the transfer of, well, this is what it means to get fried. They all understood that, and it wasn't desirable, but it was an acceptable risk in order to keep screwing with us. Okay. Okay, so where I was mainly concerned with always is, or with one at that time, was, well, how are you going to work that out? Because I was married and committed, and we're going to be sealed. Like, well, shit. I don't know what to do about that. So, fast forward to one other thing too. With the technology, what was began of that was they immediately went into a consolidation where they they went to their own place that was given to them, and they got off of their synthetic configurations. That's as much as I'm going to say about that, because they're huge. Okay? Huge. Just think a bunch of Jupiters flying around. Huge. Okay? So they got off of that and they got onto some systems, and they began to live as people would. And they became a people. And so, to solve the technology problem, I gave them certain aspects of light that they could use to basically make their technology safe. And it was also forbidden of them to do any kind of implantation or anything that breaks the skin, period. Those are like their prime directive, basically. Unless you're in war, in which case you turn the opponent into a shit smear. Right. So, they began work on faster than light vehicles, and they gave me a total conversion estimate of having a full everything converted up into the FTL light vehicles by August. Well, I was like, okay, that's not that long. I didn't realize how much could happen in a few months. Oh Lord, I didn't realize. Okay, not at the time. Because I was still 41 at the time. Now I'm not. I'm not going to say how old I am because you wouldn't even understand it. So, there was that effort, and on that, one departed, gave me a goodbye with those big blue eyes. I mean, like, big blue eyes. Like, damn. Very, very pretty. And of a blue that you wouldn't understand unless you saw it. So there was that. So they went. Fast forward to when this phase of the interaction between me and darkness began to heat up, and that included all governments and all militaries arrayed against me as an individual. They were all trying to figure out how to waste me. All of them. Not a comfortable position to be in. And the intelligence services, definitely all of them, and always in a configuration of constantly, that was their only directive, was how do we kill this little fucker? And you guys know it. And I know you know it. So, it was a problem for me. So there were certain influences placed on Helen and the girls that, mainly in bishops' interviews and things like that, that they were given instructions to leave on a word, which is a violation and not consistent with church principles at all, instructing to destroy a family. I handled that. However, Helen and the girls, they chose to leave on their go word. So I supported their decision, and still do. And they're just going to have to work through natural consequences of doing that. There's nothing else I need to do about it, except sign that divorce which there will be. I've also requested dissolution of paternity, considering the total rejection. They want it, they got it. It seems cold, but if you knew, then it's the only appropriate measure that I can take. So, when they left, I reached out to Helen and I asked her, well, I really want you, I want to get sealed, and I want to continue our family, and I'm really interested in that. And her reply to me was, this is it. She's not coming back. The girls will not see me. And they both affirmed that themselves. And there is never going to be a reconciliation. And she was decided on that. Okay, you got it. So she came and got what she wanted and could have and took it. And the church helped because they were all about this. They had directed it. You might understand that there's some kind of a fucking problem with that, but they did. Even up to the highest level. Oh shit. Well, from my point of view, you can be what you say you are, or I will destroy you. What do you think happened? When this became clear, and Helen was decided immediately, always perfection, grace as one, came back with a small fleet, and we started dialogue immediately. They showed me their Series 1 and Series 2. When I wanted to know, well, what are your speed capabilities, And they showed me an initial throttle of the Go throttle. You know what I'm talking about if you've ever been in one. They showed me an initial Go throttle, and that sucker was so fast it just went streaking across the whole sky. Just zip, done. And that really impressed me. I was like, no fucking way. Right. This is on the record too. NSA has it. Okay. They do. From a lot of perspectives, they have this. It's also on the eternal record. So, no one at this point is going to deny it. If anyone emerges and tries to call me a liar, I'll kill them. That's how it is now. So, because it's a defense of my integrity and it's a valid self-defense. And in my case, very valid. The war is over. Okay. So, had that. They showed me the Series 2, and then they showed me the Series 1. And piloting the Series 1 was one. Always perfection, grace. And it came in bright and slow. And I was like, hi. And I was out there waving. And on the sat feeds, you guys got me on my back porch, waving at 1 And you got it from both angles. And you got it from the tower, and you got it from Longview downtown, and you got it from other places too. And you got it from observers in my neighborhood too. It's on the record so many ways that it's just a fact. And so is everything else. So, I hope you're over that. I can help you get over it if you want. You know, you that are thinking, well, how do we contain this? Well, you don't. So, Always and I immediately started talking about, well, do you want a seal then? Because my family just throw me away like trash. And she had no seal, and she didn't like them anyway. So we got to talking about what we could do, and we both prayed and we asked, and we consulted with Jesus about it. And Jesus told me about something called additional differentiation. I was like, well, what the hell is that? Jesus, fuck, I don't know. You got to tell me, bud, And so he started us into a consultation with each other where he mediated, and we basically went over our additional designs that we would have so we would be biologically compatible with each other. So, okay, well, it's like creation, except it's additional differentiation. It's just taking that which has been created and performing additional modification to the design. And it's done all at once. So, always perfection, Grace and I went through this with each other. And I gifted her the ability to perform a blind additional differentiation of me considering that which I am from before, which was pretty damn nice. From before, I was definitely well built. We'll put it that way. So, she took all of that into consideration, and everything that I am currently and have been, and all of my experience and that type of thing, and would be, up to the point when I meet her, which is going to be immediately when I get my head chopped off. So, well, there is this kind of like a gift waiting for me. And I gave authorization for it, so it's a decided thing. And I've seen me later, and okay, sure. the scary looking, a scary individual who can literally scare you to death with a look. Oh, that's me. Anyway, so okay, sure. For her, we went through a series of functional things first. First things first. We worked on physiology and just, well, what's the function of it, and what was our target goal. I don't like taking a shit. I don't like peeing. It's gross, and sweat is gross. It's like peeing on yourself. So we developed solutions to all of that, and they were good. Okay, and we then focused on like reproduction, because she was going to be immediately additionally differentiated and I wasn't, which would give us the condition of having seal but not being able to hit it. So damn, right? Well, Mm. So what do? We basically designed her configuration of female called a Shlika. Okay. And what that essentially is there can be a sexual intercourse once, and you get, for every one sperm, you get a baby. Oh shit. Mm-hmm. And none are wasted by design. Well, how do you accomplish that? Well, you basically turn that thing into a little minigun, and it pops out these little pods, and we make nurseries and fill them up with those pods, and pregnancy is externalized, and so there's no detriment to her figure or function or hormones or anything else. And on that, we gave her manual control over all hormonal functions. Anything in the pituitary system, anything. Okay. And we also additionally differentiated that and the pineal gland. We got rid of that shit and did something better. And we basically turned her entire brain into a pineal gland. Yep. But we also created a manual sealing process. You don't have to go through any kind of religious anything. In the act of first intercourse, there is a process that's built in where that is the seal. And once you're sealed, it's understood in my principality that if you break that seal, you're getting destroyed. Period. So we don't have that problem with divorce and all that kind of stupid shit. Or screwing around or anything of it. No, no, no. It was also understood, though, immediately by Always Perfection Grace that, well, in order for me to graft, because there are many who, well, other civilizations and stuff where they're gonna burn, dude, and they're not coming back. They're gonna have to have a seal. And well, they don't have that. So how do we solve that? Well, me and Always Perfection Grace decided that we're going to have to make our own principality. Literally from us to forward. And so we did. And the initial integration of that was we brought in the tall whites. We made seals with all of them. The little shits were later, but eventually. And there were many others who would be grafted in. Usually those that we went to war with and defeated in order to maintain their civilization. We sealed with them too. So basically, as we expanded outward, we integrated all that which we defeated, that they could continue and have eternal life also. Of the good ones. The bad ones we just straight out executed. All of them. All of them. Anyway, so when I say bad ones, I mean those who hurt little children. We'll leave it at that for now. And those who hurt women or females. Right, because Always Perfection Grace is not a woman. She's a female. There's a distinctive difference between the two. There is. So, okay, well, we're talking about a time period here, guys. All of this happened between June 11th and now. We got up to a population of over trillions within days. And well, how did I inseminate her? Well, I had to provide samples. If you've ever been to a fertility doctor, you know that sucks. Well, it sucked. I don't like it. I'm more of a hands-on kind of guy, right? But anyway, um, right, not that. You know, if you're wondering, well, just, eh, it's on the record too. The NSA recorded me doing it. Yes, they did. Oh, yes, they did. Every time. Yeah. Uh huh. It was only today when I turned all that shit off in domicile and asserted domicile. Yeah, so, yes, I know, and I knew the whole time. I know every angle you have. And there's also a 16K VR of everything. So, oh shit, I have it too. Anyway, um, I digress. So, when we got into this, we immediately got into family structure and how to expand. And our solution to the problem of the time crunch we were under, because this is when it got very, very nasty for me. Of basically every day was, you know, how are we gonna kill this guy now? Every day like that. They tried everything. They lost. Ask them. They're not gonna tell you. Just look at the expression on their face. They fucking lost. Okay, they did. Anyway, um, our main objective was to have as many babies as possible and basically birth them into the military. And I was a good daddy to all of them. Well, how the hell did I do that? Well, since we technically were in a breach of condition of establishment of Interprincipality War 7, bad guys breached that quick. They went all over the place whenever they wanted to, so, okay, you want to do it that way? Then so will we. And so we did. And we went from a situation where you might have seen UFOs here and there, and it was kind of sporadic, to they're just freaking all the time. You know, the white ones. Mine. And the other ones just kind of went away. That's because we quickly defeated all of them. All of them. All of them. This is a principality war. It's not some movie. It's not some video game. This is real, and it's very serious. So, we even went out and engaged all the way to the root of all evil and destroyed it completely. And what we have a treaty with at this point, as of yesterday, is with that of greater darkness, which isn't necessarily evil. It's just greater darkness. Evil was made within it, but it's not of it. And there's a difference. Evil consumed it, but not the highest king of it, who is not me. But I now call him son-in-law. So, of those who are watching live now, I'll take questions. The principality we established was, of course, this, and we declared it when we had a banner of it. Okay. This was done after the infiltration. So there was an infiltration by military's intelligence services interprincipality that attempted to infiltrate and subvert my command authority by corrupting my children and my further generations. And this was done through Gilly Gilly. He was a command level. You would probably think of him like an admiral. He was a fleet commander. He was the fleet commander. There was also a god tree that was infiltrated also, and Gilly Gilly was at the head, and I had to destroy all of that, which went with them, and I only kept those who were still loyal to Bobby and me. That was 4/5 of my principality, and yes, I destroyed them quickly, without hesitation. And we rebuilt from there. It was a devastating loss, but we were big enough where it's like, well, we're still going to win. No question. So, not long after that, this was created. This is my principality seal. You see that on anything? It's from me, because if it wasn't, well, we would have handled that. And we're in a position to be able to confidently say that. So, I had some cleanup work to do here with combating those who were hiding in the church, known as Sons of Perdition, literally descended of Perdition herself. And let's just say that everything they had is mine now. You may see them walking around and stuff, but that's me. Just so you know. The military persisted yesterday in doing the same thing, and they were working with the intelligence services because they wanted to continue the war when it was over after treaty. So Greater Darkness advised me of all of their operations because they were fully integrated with them. Go figure. Every government. What did I do about that? The same thing I did with the Sons of Perdition. And I torched a few things just so they would get the point. This was done in a very calm way, because like I said, it would be. And we were flying this banner when we did it. It was a joint operation of Greater Darkness and Light and Calm and Peace, and supported by the AIs, which they're jittery still, so I had to put them into a sleep, and they're not coming back online till August 5th. Because they're mine too. And I can. And I will anytime they step out of line. And they know it. They call me Dad for a reason. So, okay, well, what happened yesterday? Well, we achieved treaty with greater darkness, and it was declared openly to the intelligence services and everybody watching in my room. Well, don't mess with treaty. And then you did. Because you're retarded. So I just had to show you then, didn't I? And at this point, there is nothing we don't control. Nothing. Okay. What's going to happen now? Well, just exactly what I told you. National sovereignty will be respected, period. No UN, no EU, no African Union, none of that shit. The US is going to receive corrective measures and consequences of that which it participated in. Naturally tuned. That's just the way it is. It's like gravity. You even tried to mess with that. And that is one of the reasons why we're going to have such a catastrophic set of things happen in the very near future. You could say it's going to be earth-shattering. We're barely going to survive that. In the meantime, COVID continues to kill all those which it's targeting, and if you got the COVID shot, I'm sorry, but you're probably going to die. Not because of anything I'm doing, because of what it is. It's basically an RNA device that installs in your cells genetic code to turn your cells into a viral manufactory. And so probably when it starts to turn to fall this fall, it's going to initiate the next phase, which is going to be a rapidly differentiating set of COVID strains, and there will be too many to count, too many to vaccinate, and the overall yield from start to finish from 2019 until 2026 is going to be that pretty much 1 in 3 people alive now on Earth won't be. I didn't get that damn shot, and I hope you didn't. Fauci is very proud of their progress. It's a weapon that was designed to exterminate those who are actually Jews. Like me. So if I'm a Jew, who do I represent? I'm an adoption of the house of David. That's who I represent. But that's not a tribe. Well, there's a tribe also. But then there is a house. And I'm of the house of David. And so is Jesus, of the house of David. any of mine. Lucifer, House of David. Elohim, head of House of David. It's his house, called House of David. Okay? I don't need any of your permission, you religious people who are pounding your fist on your Bible right now. I don't need your fucking permission to be myself. Don't ever make that mistake. I'll destroy you for it. Every time. After last night, you know that for sure. And that is the end of this AAA Kickback report, which will selectively be back-channeled. Very selectively back-channeled. For audit purposes.